hanging out here. This is my new date. I think we're gonna go on the great movie ride together. Sound good? I'm gonna take that as a yes.
Hey everyone! Travel back in time with me to the golden age of Disney's Hollywood studios. If you're like me, the loss of the Great Movie Ride is still painful. Later, I'll discuss why it was retired. But first, let's take a trip down memory lane, explore the history behind this iconic attraction, and learn about the classic films that made this ride unforgettable. Settle in and enjoy a little bit of nostalgia. Ready when you are, CB. The Great Movie Ride opened on May 1st, 1989 at MGM Studios, which we now know as Disney's Hollywood Studios. It was originally meant to be an attraction at Epcot near the Land Pavilion, but Disney's CEO at the time, Michael Eisner, had a background as a movie studio boss in Hollywood and was drawn to expanding the concept. His interest in old Hollywood and the movie-making process, paired with competition from nearby Universal Studios and tourism demand for a third park at Disney World, led to the creation of an entire theme park centered around the magic of movies. I was absolutely captivated by the Great Movie Ride as a child, which helped pave the way for a lifelong love of classic cinema and a graduate degree that involved film history and theory. Before you even stepped on the ride vehicle, you could feel the magic of classic movies all around you. Many of the costumes and props showcased in the lobby over the years were authentic. For instance, the carousel horse from Mary Poppins was actually the horse used in the film, and the hollow chessboard from Star Wars was an authentic prop on loan from Lucas Museum. So now for the fun part, let's step into the ride queue together and I'll share a movie-by-movie commentary on the classics that made the attraction so memorable. The movie posters on display were from some of my favorite films. For instance, Ninotchka was directed by Ernst Lubitsch, who was known for his sophisticated comedies. Very last section of the ride queue brought guests into a big theater with a screen. I remember watching classic movie trailers here when I was a child, but during the TCM partnership from 2015 to the attraction's closure on August 13th, 2017, you could see clips of the late, great Robert Osborne. The movie clip we're watching now is from Busby Berkeley's 1933 musical Footlight Parade. If you're a Judy Garland fan, I recommend watching one of my favorite Busby Berkeley musicals, which is Strike Up the Band from 1940, because the conga sequence is absolutely a delightful sight to behold. Gene Kelly, who we'll see again in the ride, is a musical star known for his realistic, athletic, everyman dancing style. Surprisingly, James Cagney was also a talented dancer and musical star, but he appears in the gangster section of the ride because he is most remembered for films like 1931's Public Enemy.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Hollywood. In just a few moments, the doors behind me will open and your magical journey into the movies will begin.
The ride loading area and pre-show always gave me chills. Disney Imagineers truly captured the feeling of walking under a movie theater marquee and immersing yourself in the magic of a great movie. If you had an especially enthusiastic ride host, you knew you were in for an incredible 22 minutes.
Is everybody ready? Yeah! Great, the cameras are ready to roll. We're ready when you are, CB.
The phrase "ready when you are, CB" is a reference to classic movie director Cecil B. DeMille. He had one shot to film an expensive, epic battle sequence full of stunts and explosions. The stunts went off without a hitch, but 3 of the 4 camera operators ran into technical trouble while filming. DeMille hoped the 4th operator would have better news, but to his exasperation, the guy had zoned out and thought he was still waiting for the director to yell "action," responding to him with a smile and saying, "Ready when you are, CB." The first sequence in the ride pays tribute to the previously mentioned movie musical Footlight Parade. Busby Berkeley's signature directorial style involved creating complex geometrical patterns with a combination of performer choreography and camera angles for his musical numbers. The on-screen result was a visually stunning kaleidoscope, and By a Waterfall is one of the best examples of Berkeley's cinematic artistry. A little-known fact about 1952's Singin' in the Rain is that Gene Kelly filmed this iconic rainy musical number while sick with a high fever. Walt Disney's own well-known iconic musical Mary Poppins was the highest-grossing film of 1964, and it earned 5 Oscars. Walt cast Julie Andrews after seeing her in a play, but Cary Grant was Walt's first choice to play Bert. Even though he's one of my favorite actors of all time, I can't imagine anyone more endearing than Dick Van Dyke in the role. Each ride-through for the Great Movie Ride was a slightly different experience depending on which genre room your vehicle stopped in for a fun and dramatic sequence with a live actor. Right now, we're in the gangster movie genre room, and sadly, I don't have footage of a ride-through with that live-action sequence, but let's talk about the movies the room references. Here's a close-up of the movie posters for Public Enemy, Little Caesar, and 20,000 Years in Sing Sing. All 3 films are prime examples of the genre's rise in popularity during the 1930s Great Depression era. Because these movies were produced before the Hollywood Censorship Code, also known as the Hays Code, they're surprisingly gritty, dealing with topics like social class and ethnic struggles through the lens of organized crime. I also have to give a personal shout out to 1932's Scarface and Paul Muni's incredibly dark yet incredibly compelling performance. The gangster car license plate may look like a random number, but it's actually an Imagineering Easter egg. It represents February 14th, 1929, the day of the infamous St. Valentine's Day massacre orchestrated by Al Capone's gang. Westerns are perfect companions with gangster films because both feature loner heroes. Clint Eastwood was heavily associated with the genre for his starring roles in westerns like 1964's A Fistful of Dollars. His movies are often called spaghetti westerns because they were filmed in Europe by Italian director Sergio Leone. But the real reason he's included in the ride is because Disney president at the time, Frank Wells, knew Clint Eastwood and personally asked his permission. John Wayne is arguably the most famous Western movie star of all time, and his place in the ride was representative of his numerous Western roles. Even his horse in the scene was created as a composite of horses from different films. The sunset background shown here emphasizes the wide skylines common in director John Ford's cinematic style. He was known for avoiding close-up shots and instead framing a lone protagonist against vast, wide-open vistas moving across the screen on the horizon.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. Your guide will return momentarily. Remain seated, please.
Looky here.
The Western Bandit and gangster versions of this live actor sequence played out similarly as your ride vehicle was hijacked by a villain and used as a getaway car. Sometimes tour guides and actors had to improvise longer scenarios in the scene due to ride delays indicated by a red light. The gangster option was called the B show, while the Western Bandit sequence we're watching was the A show. It was often considered more desirable, partially due to the flaming pyrotechnics, but also because it was rare and didn't run regularly unless the park was busy enough to require 2 ride vehicles that day.
Time to saddle up and ride. Yeah, giddy up. Adios, Tim Horn. I'm riding off into the sunset.
As the Bandit took over, the ride atmosphere also made a dark turn into the sci-fi horror genre mashup film Alien from 1979. Disney often has a villain sequence in their attraction storytelling, as with the Happily Ever After fireworks, letting the atmosphere grow foreboding as the villains run the show for a bit before a triumphant restoration of good.
The area you are entering is extremely dangerous. Proceed with caution.
The movie Alien was notable for not only terrifying audiences, but making them sick in movie theaters. Yet it was a watershed success. Famed film critic Pauline Kael commented on why audiences loved it, saying it reached out, grabbed you, and squeezed your stomach. It was more gripping than entertaining, but a lot of people didn't mind. They thought it was terrific. Next, the genre mood shifted to action-adventure, transporting everyone into the 1981 Indiana Jones movie Raiders of the Lost Ark. Indy was named after George Lucas's dog Indiana and almost had the last name Smith until Steven Spielberg changed it to Jones and the legendary hero was born. I don't know about you, but I think Indiana Smith doesn't have the same ring to it. Spielberg wanted 7,000 to 10,000 real snakes in the film, but thought the live snakes looked a little sparse on set once he saw them, so the crew found rubber hoses to cut up and fill in the gaps. There may have been snakes, but this genre is all about courageous protagonists overcoming tyranny to save the day. Adventure films draw us in with the excitement and mysticism of the unknown, taking us on a journey full of maps, exotic locations, swashbuckling, and treasure. Actor Douglas Fairbanks helped shape the film genre in the 1920s and 30s with his defining roles in movies like The Thief of Baghdad and Robin Hood. The genre works because it's pure escapism, captivating our imaginations with everyday people embarking on heroic adventures. But the inner journey of self-discovery is just as important as the outer journey, even when it's something as simple as learning to be brave in the face of what scares you, like Indy overcoming his fear of snakes. The storytelling woven into the Great Movie Ride took its cue from the adventure genre tropes in this sequence. It punishes the greedy villain and gives our formerly meek tour guide a chance to transform into a brave protagonist.
Disturb the treasure of the gods, and you shall all pay with your lives.
Despite the faraway locale of the 1930s Tarzan adventure movies, they were actually filmed in California and Silver Springs, Florida, which is less than 2 hours north of Disney World. Interestingly, some of the monkeys who appeared in the films escaped into the Florida wild in the 1930s, and their descendants still roam the river forest area near Ocala, Florida. 12 Tarzan movies were made between 1932 and 1948, starring Olympic swimmer Johnny Weissmuller. He set numerous world records for swimming and won 5 gold medals before retiring and becoming an actor. In the Tarzan books by Edgar Rice Burroughs, Jane Porter is an American from Baltimore, and Tarzan is the son of British nobility. But in the classic films, Jane is British, and she's played actually by an Irish actress named Maureen O'Sullivan. Disney notably maintained Jane's change in citizenship with their 1999 animated Tarzan adaptation. 1942's Casablanca is considered one of the greatest cinematic romances in history. Yet, funny enough, lead actor Humphrey Bogart was a reluctant romantic when they first filmed one of the romantic flashback scenes in Paris. He said, "I'm not up to this love stuff and don't know just what to do." Lead actress Ingrid Bergman struggled with that scene too because it was the first scene they filmed and the script wasn't finished at the time. She didn't know if her character was in love with Bogart's Rick or Victor Laszlo. Director Michael Curtis didn't really know either, so he told her to play it in between. Casablanca was made during the height of World War II, as filming commenced only 6 months after the Pearl Harbor attack. Looking back, Casablanca seems especially moving because no one, from the filmmakers to the audience members, could predict the outcome of the war at the time. Many of the supporting cast members were in fact Jewish refugees who had fled Nazi occupation. It all lends an extra weight to the storytelling stakes and the thematic explorations of self-sacrifice for the sake of the greater good. Now for a little ride trivia. The airplane used in this sequence is only the front half of the plane. So if you're ever feeling nostalgic for the Great Movie Ride, head over to Disney's Magic Kingdom and ride the Jungle Cruise attraction where you can see the back half of this very plane in the crash scene. The Dark Tunnel Room was originally supposed to be a tornado sequence that swept audiences into The Wizard of Oz, but contractual obligations only allowed the use of 2 scenes from The Wizard of Oz, so the tunnel was reimagined as the perfect showcase for Sorcerer Mickey from Disney's Fantasia. Fantasia changed the way Mickey Mouse was drawn as artist Fred Moore added pupils to his eyes for the very first time. The Great Movie Ride's grand finale was 1939's dazzling Technicolor film, The Wizard of Oz. The famous ruby red slippers were actually on display in the lobby during the 1990s. Sadly, they were not one of the 4 sets Judy Garland actually wore in the film, but one of the duplicates from the wardrobe department that were given away as a promotional prize. A fun fact about this section of the ride is that it was used as a dessert party room, complete with Technicolor tables, as one of the Disney wedding package reception location options. The cocktail and dinner portions of the reception package took place in the gangster and western rooms, and after dessert, guests were invited to an outdoor dance party near the Mickey Sorcerer hat. There were even characters from gangsters to western cowboys and cowgirls to Glinda and Dorothy characters from The Wizard of Oz who roamed throughout the evening. I'm pretty sad I was never invited to a Great Movie Ride wedding party. Disney initially wanted to make the Wizard of Oz film, but MGM owned the rights to the book. Yet, there's still a Disney connection because the actress who voiced Snow White, Adriana Castellotti, also voiced the Romeo and Juliet line during the Tin Man song, If I Only Had a Heart. Making The Wizard of Oz wasn't easy. Many of the actors faced struggles and peril, from severe makeup allergies to the Wicked Witch of the West actress Margaret Hamilton's burn injuries during this fiery sequence in the movie. Margaret Hamilton was actually a kindergarten teacher before pursuing an acting career. A magazine interview with her close friend Jean Nelson showcases the sweet person behind the villain, describing her as a delightful, charming woman. Margaret herself joked about the role in an interview, recalling she was in need of money when her agent asked if she wanted a role in the new Wizard of Oz film. She told him, "Oh boy, The Wizard of Oz, that has been my favorite book since I was 4, but she was taken aback when he told her she'd play the part of the witch. He simply looked at her like this was obvious and asked, "What else?"
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too!
The finale scene for the ride was originally designed to be very different. It would have ended in the Wizard's Chamber, where the man behind the curtain would have been revealed as the Wizard of Oz, just like in the movie. But Imagineers also had something else that was extra special and extra magical in mind, because they also planned for another curtain to dramatically drop and the actor who hijacked your ride vehicle earlier to be revealed. Finally, additional curtains would have dropped all around you, showcasing every animatronic character featured in the ride as they took a final bow, and I have to admit, it sounds as if it would have been pretty cool. Although it's sad Imagineers couldn't fulfill their vision for this section, I've always thought this last animatronic display was magical, and it's one of my favorite scenes in the ride. The Great Movie Ride montage finale never failed to tug at my emotions. The original version was designed with the assistance of Chuck Workman, who also created every film montage for the Oscars between 1990 and 2010. Even during my childhood, I remember reaching this sequence of the ride with an odd sense of reverence. I was especially excited about the TCM sponsorship in the final years of the ride because longtime host Robert Osborne and the channel in general were formative components of my early classic movie enthusiasm and education. People often ask where I watch classic films, and TCM is still my go-to source. If you have a cable subscription with the channel, you can even watch a library of TCM classic movies free on demand with the Watch TCM app.
From all of us here at Disney's Hollywood Studios and Turner Classic Movies, we hope you've enjoyed our tour through some of my favorite films. But remember, there are many more adventures waiting for you every day on TCM.
We didn't need dialogue. We had faces.
Wait a minute. You ain't heard nothing yet. Step inside!
While a lot of factors went into the Great Movie Ride's ultimate closure, from dwindling guest interest to Disney's rebranded vision for a park that celebrated the magic of Disney movies like Star Wars and Toy Story instead of the magic of the movie-making process in general, it's my understanding that Robert Osborne's death was the final decider. My research led me to believe that Osborne was passionate about preserving the ride, and the TCM partnership gave Disney resources plus a reason to maintain it. While the details are a little bit murky, it seems as if when he passed, there was no longer an advocate for the ride. Apparently, Disney also felt an attraction about old movies and classic performers didn't really resonate with younger guests who hadn't heard of them, which, I have to admit, is fairly tragic if you ask me, because I'm kind of an old soul. Partially thanks to the Great Movie Ride, film history isn't just a collection of entertainment facts about forgotten movies for me. Instead, I believe studying film history is a valuable pursuit. It teaches us about the long legacy of creative expression, bold ingenuity, and the never-ending collaborative endeavor to find meaning in the human experience. The best filmmakers and people, in my opinion, learn from history in order to build something spectacular for the present. The loss of the Great Movie Ride hits harder than any other Disney Parks attraction loss for me, because with it, we've lost a living cinematic history museum dedicated to preserving the magic of the movies that have shaped us. Yet, for Great Movie Ride fans, this attraction lives on in our hearts and on YouTube. I'm thankful that whenever we miss it, we can always search for a wonderful ride-through video or watch one of the legendary films showcased in the ride. I'm also thankful for all the memories I have of the attraction, especially one particularly emotional memory from the day Robin Williams passed. We were in the parks, incredibly saddened by the news of his death when we decided to visit the Great Movie Ride. As the Robin Williams montage clip flashed on screen, everyone in the ride vehicle clapped and cheered. "We love you, Robin," they said. There was something special in the atmosphere that day as all the guests bonded over their common love for an actor who had touched their lives and their imaginations. I can't think of a better example of the power of great performances and great movies.
If you enjoyed our finale film, I created the whole thing. If you didn't like it, Liz did it. Yes, do you have a question? I don't know the answer, but I can make one up. Oh, look, we get to go. Okay, everybody, hold on. We're going to pull out really fast. Burn rubber. This is what a slow car chase looks like.
Movies, the stuff that dreams are made of.
Before we make a grand exit, here's a rapid-fire bonus round of trivia and facts about the Great Movie Ride. Disney Imagineers used the original blueprints for the real Grauman's Chinese Theater in Los Angeles, and they built the facade to scale instead of forced perspective like the rest of the park. Although Grauman's Chinese Theater opened in 1927, the plaque in Hollywood Studios read 1928, which some believe is a joke referencing the 1,928 feet of track on the ride. In the early stages of ride development, Imagineers wanted live celebrity impersonators stationed throughout to interact with guests instead of animatronic performances. In the gangster scene, the James Cagney animatronic is wearing one of the actor's actual suits given to Imagineers by his family. John Wayne's animatronic once had a belt buckle worn by Wayne in the movie Red River. Unfortunately, it was stolen and replaced by a replica. In the gangster and western scenes, some of the additional animatronics are modeled after animatronics in Pirates of the Caribbean, and also President Thomas Jefferson from the Hall of Presidents attraction. Ghostbusters was originally supposed to be featured after the Alien section, but Bill Murray declined to give likeness rights to Disney. The ride's theme song, Hooray for Hollywood, was featured in the 1937 movie Hollywood Hotel. And for one last piece of trivia, the attraction was almost called Great Moments at the Movies, but now we know it as the Great Movie Ride.
You can find many more beloved stories and legendary stars on Turner Classic Movies.
On behalf of Disney's Hollywood Studios and Turner Classic Movies, we'd like to thank you for joining us on the Great Movie Ride. Now, please remain seated while the video concert please stop. These calipers will belong is in the small student by the hand. And when the doors open, rise, swing madly, and make it run into the rear of the vehicle. Oh, and one more thing. While you're in action, let's put a round of applause for yours truly. Okay, put the thing on, and action. And you have a wonderful day here at Disney's Hollywood Studios. And I'm Bill Obama. We'll see you at the movies.
And on behalf of the Princess Lessons YouTube channel, I'd like to thank you for joining me on this behind-the-scenes commentary and historical tour. Now, please rise dramatically to your feet and make a grand exit directly to the next video. Until next time, I'll see you at the movies. Oh, and one more thing. When I yell action, don't forget the thunderous applause, or maybe hitting the like button, for your favorite YouTube tour guide. Places, everybody, and action!